Well, the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, did address the possibility of the stock market closing to sort of breathe a little bit. He was not keen on it. Take a look.
We absolutely believe in keeping the markets open. Okay, Americans need to know they have access to their money. After September 11th, the only reason why the markets were closed was because the technology was disrupted. I've been on the phone with the major banks, with the New York Stock Exchange. Everybody wants to keep it open.
All right, to the American Institute for Economic Research President Edward Stringham, Walter Asset Management CEO Rebecca Walser, and Charlie Gasparino joins us right now on the phone. Edward, to you first on what you think the message the administration is sending. We had a reason to close the markets after 9/11. They couldn't open. They were so damaged, and there was flooding at the time, I remember. So they couldn't open. And when they did, days later, as if the notion was that some days would pass and people would be calmer, well, they still tanked. So does the Treasury Secretary have a point? You want to send a signal that you're not going to just walk away from the markets.
Oh, certainly, yeah. The markets being open is crucial for the economy, for people to know what business sentiment is in the world. The fact that it's dropped so much really shows that people are really worried about supply chain management and, people just being able to work. But it is good today, the fact that markets are up a little bit. We need this pulse on the economy, so I'm glad that they're not broaching that subject of closing the stock exchange.
Rebecca, I'm curious what you make of the fact that we can call it stimulus, we can call it just a way of providing cash to the banking system, the corporate world. But if you think about it, interest rates in late August were at around 2.5% for overnight money, now close to zero. In just the last couple of weeks, they've been reduced by over 1.5 percentage points. The Fed has poured trillions of dollars into buying everything from commercial paper, mortgage-backed securities, Treasury securities. And today, notwithstanding, the markets have tanked on that. So I wonder what would rally them, and I suspect it would be good news on the virus itself. What do you think?
No, Neil, you're 100% right. This is really a situation where we've got the economics versus the actual health of people, and it's forcing people to stay home. It's forcing people not to obviously patronize restaurants, bars, gyms, all of the things. Movie theaters are closing. So when you have this sort of situation, which is really unprecedented, except for back maybe during the Spanish flu, you're going to close down businesses, which is going to have the blunted economic impact that the stock market here is forecasting. So what I see, Neil, is that you're exactly right. This will not stop until the virus is ebbed. And what I really see is the stock market slowly dying, death, 3 months, and then I see a miraculous resurrection really after 3 months. I really truly see that the virus will be contained and the market will come roaring back, and we will have an influx of world capital that we have never seen before in the history of the world.
All right, I hope you're right on that. Charlie Gasparino, your reporting has been stellar on this, but one of the things that interests me when we talk about the Spanish flu in 1918, there's the great comparison the president alluded to that St. Louis, for example, one of the biggest cities at the time in the country, had done this social distancing thing, and the losses were limited. Philadelphia at the time did not, and the losses were substantial. 675,000 Americans lost their lives in that plague that took 50 million lives across the world, and I'm not even getting into World War I. So does the president have a point to say, look, on this social interaction and curbing it, whether it's 10 or fewer, 25 or 50 or fewer, depending on the state or locality, that it's about keeping people apart?
Yeah, I think by the way, I thought he had a very strong press conference. Something, and you could tell the markets kind of liked it. It was bouncing back up as he was speaking. He sounded, except for the end where he got a little petty, he really set the tone. And he's absolutely right. Listen, I have family members. I'm old enough to have family members, believe it or not, who were affected by this Spanish flu. My wife's grandfather's father died in Brooklyn on the Spanish flu. It affected a lot of people. But, these were people, just so you know, who largely lived in squalor, in tenements. We have plenty of poor people in this country, don't get me wrong, but we're not at the turn of the century New York immigrants packed into tenements where 10 families share one bathroom on a floor. I mean, that's what was going on back then. So remember, we're comparing apples to oranges, and I think he's right by taking the steps he's took. The China travel ban was excellent. That was those steps and the warnings now to social distance will work. I want to make one quick point here about the stock market. Let's not engage in saying this thing is going to come back, the greatest stock market ever when the pent-up demand hits. We don't know. We're in very uncharted territory. And I will say one other thing about the economy, and here's what is kind of scary about it. The Fed has taken all these measures. The Treasury's taken all these measures to help big business. Big business is pretty well capitalized on the whole. Not everyone, but largely well capitalized. They do have debt. They have record numbers of debt because interest rates are so low. But they're better capitalized. Where this really could get hairy for the economy is in small businesses. Small businesses really need to stay open. They're generally consumer driven. They are ground to a halt. I'm talking about restaurants, dry cleaners, you name it. That's where none of this Fed stuff, lower interest rates, QE, these other programs, the Fed facility today that, jack up the market.
It's done squat for the markets.
They have done nothing. And they employ half of Americans.
Oh, you're right. Charlie, thank you very, very much. Rebecca, I wanted to get your quick take on something else that was going on as the president was speaking. A confirmation right now that the number of cases in the U.S. just passed 5,000. A week ago, it was at 1,000. People hear something like that and say, what if this still continues to spiral for a while, maybe months? What's the impact?
Well, Neil, I think that's exactly what I'm saying we need to be prepared for, because we haven't had the test widespread availability. And so we expect fully that the numbers are going to climb as the tests become available, and I expect that to further depress the market. As I said, I do see several more months of this actually happening, but once the virus hits the peak, and I do believe what President Trump was dead on in his talk, that we will see it. We will see when it stops, and that is when I believe we will, because this is so unique. And I take Charlie's point that he's saying, look, we can't predict when it's going to come back. But this has come upon us so quickly because of, Neil, what has actually happened. We had great unemployment numbers. We had excellent growth. We had earnings seasons that were surpassing what we expected. We expected a loss. We had a huge growth of 4% on average. We had great fundamentals, and this just came out of nowhere and took everything down the fastest ever. So, Neil, because of that, when this virus subsides and everyone in the world will see that the U.S. has reached a point where it's back to business as usual, I believe President Trump is 100% correct. I believe because he's done the things that he's been asked to do, he will be, and America will be rewarded, and we will see that the market will come back, and it will be unique. To Charlie's point, it will be unique, but it is going to come back as fast as it went down.
Well, timing is everything, right, Edward? And I'm just wondering here, given what's going on right now, and a Wall Street Journal poll out yesterday that showed that Americans are less confident about the future, whether they take that out on him.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's really hurting the average person, especially small business.
Right.
I think that there's the health risk, but there's the economic risk by making restaurant workers unemployed and all these small businesses having to stay at home for weeks, maybe even months. This is going to be a huge burden on them. So I think it's good to slow down the spread of the disease. That's necessary. That's great. But at the same time, if we're being too draconian and destroying the economy in the process, that could actually be even worse.
All right, final word on the subject, guys. I want to thank you all on these fast-breaking developments. Before I